Be chairing today's meeting. So, yes, thank you for getting here. At least it stopped raining, which is quite good when you've got the flood portfolio at the County Council. So it's very good. So thank you for all turning up today. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I can see everybody. And Kate, I've got your message about we'll try and finish to make sure you finish for your appointment as well. So thank you very much. So we'll go on to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies, please, Howard.
Yes, good morning, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Alcock.
Thank you. Next item is disclosure of interest. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will disclose an interest as a Town Councillor member of the Market Forum, but I have taken advice, legal advice, and I will take part in the discussion. Because as a market forum, it is not a decision-making body.
Brilliant, that's great, thank you. I'm sure Howard's just noted that as well. Yeah, anyone else? No, I will declare an interest on the item regarding serious violence duty. Today we're actually talking about Stratford District Council's responsibility in producing in meeting its serious violence duty obligations. We'll also be hearing from the Head of Community Safety and Trading Standards at Warwickshire County Council, and that falls under my portfolio. But we will be scrutinising SDC's duty and what we've got to do. And Jonathan Toy is here to give us some overview from a county perspective, and obviously Jonathan is a regional lead as well in many areas on violence, etc. So, and the county have got their own scrutiny of that process as well. So, I've taken advice from my learned gentleman on my left, and he's of the same opinion on that I'm okay to stay in the chair. It's totally different to the fire and rescue one at the previous meeting. So. But if anybody has any concerns, please could they raise them now. Otherwise, you've got me in the chair for a bit longer. I can see everybody smiling at that thought, so smiling, wincing, grimacing, one of the three. Right, item number 3 is minutes of the previous meeting. We need to confirm that the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of February 2024. We started at 10:01 and ended at 2:47 p.m. after a break. We remember it well, don't we? So, any comments on those, or are you happy that I sign those after the meeting?
That is exceptional, isn't it, Chair? Because when I agreed to sub for Tony, you didn't say it was 4.5 hours.
Yeah, we normally go on a bit longer, David, so we do please a bit of it. No, 2.6 actually. Right, good stuff. So, thank you for that. Chairman's brief, I've not been involved or updated of any issues. So, again, that one's quickly done. So I will now move on to item number 5, which is the serious violence duty. And like I said, we've got our portfolio holder, Councillor Natalie Gist. We've got Sam Semensek, our Community Safety Manager, and Mr. Jonathan Toy, Head of Community Safety and Trading Standards at Warwickshire County Council. So, welcome everybody, and please fire away. Thank you. I don't know, it's quite the right one. Fire away, is it? A Freudian slip there. Yeah, probably one of the better ones, but yes, please don't shoot the messenger.
Right. Morning, everyone. First, I want to thank Jonathan for coming over to help present with this. Just for my bit to say, really, as the report does, 31st of January 2023, we have a new statutory duty for the Council, which is a serious violence duty, which places the duty on specified authorities to conduct a strategic needs assessment, develop a serious violence prevention strategy, and develop and implement a serious violence delivery plan for the local area. And Stratford-on-Avon District Council is a specified authority under that legislation. I'm now going to let Sam talk in a bit more detail about that.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the committee just for the opportunity just to speak on this this item and just to talk to you really about the progress that the Council's making in relation to meeting its duties under the Act and subsequently through the serious violence strategy that will be being adopted, how we are discharging those duties. And just by way of introduction then, I'm Sam Slowensek, so I'm the Community Safety Manager here at Stratford District Council. So the work specifically of our team is around trying to discharge our statutory duties under Section 17 of the Crime and Disorder Act, which is namely about trying to prevent and kind of detect crime happening within the district. So as a part of those duties, our team actually works specifically around antisocial behaviour, particularly around rural crime, as disproportionately this district is a rural district. But we also offer our CCTV services as well as our general sort of community safety approach. So for us, this kind of falls within our team's remit to look at discharging these duties in relation to serious violence. So the report that I presented today demonstrates the approach by Stratford District Council to discharge these duties, and obviously looks to kind of note the progress really around that. Now, namely these duties, as Councillor Gist has already talked to, is around us working together as a set of specified authorities to work together, to share information and to put in place plans to try and reduce serious violence across Warwickshire. So I'm not intending to go through all the elements of the paper, just to provide some summaries and then ultimately to hand over to Jonathan Toy. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a Stratford perspective on this strategy and the progress being made. And then Jonathan's going to talk a little bit more about actually the Warwickshire-wide interventions and the approach to the strategy that benefits us in Stratford district. So I suppose firstly, why was this duty actually introduced? Where has this really come from? So there's kind of lots of evidence at a national level, and particularly when you looked at kind of the media and kind of news outlets about serious violence and about shootings and stabbings regularly taking place, not just within metropolitan areas, but actually within sort of more rural kind of suburban areas as well. So effectively, this legislation came in a number of years ago to ultimately try and bring together responsible authorities in relation to this. Now, actually, in terms of where we sit at a local level within the West Midlands, the West Midlands itself, so not us in Warwickshire, actually has the highest rate of violence within the UK. So when we look at serious violence, actually even excluding the metropolitan kind of force area, the West Midlands Police Region does have the highest kind of rate of violence. Now, Stratford is actually one of the safest areas of Warwickshire. It's really key to highlight that actually here in particular, doing really well, but actually we have to acknowledge that violence has no borders and doesn't respect borders. And actually a lot of the challenges that are presented throughout the strategy and the approach today do try and reflect the fact that we do sit on those borders. And actually things like the proliferation of county lines as well, a term that many of you will have heard of before, but ultimately organised crime groups importing drugs into more rural areas does obviously affect all of us in Warwickshire, and that's something we need to be really cognizant of. So ultimately, as a rural district, it does present specific challenges for us, and that's highlighted within the paper specifically. So we have to try and understand these challenges. So actually, a starting block really around this strategy and the approach is trying to actually understand what the issues are. So one of the ways in which this was primarily done was to conduct what's called a strategic needs assessment, which looked to gather the kind of evidence and to understand actually the key locations, the nature of serious crime within Warwickshire and specifically within Stratford district, and also what support was available as well, and actually what diversionary intervention opportunities already existed as well. So actually some of the things just for us from a Stratford perspective is actually, you know, trying to explore around domestic violence and domestic abuse. So one of the things in particular for us as a district is actually trying to understand that. Now, the rate of domestic abuse in kind of rural areas and within Stratford is actually lower than you'd find in the towns, but actually that is a cause for us to try and further explore, well, what is actually the causation for that, because there's a lot of academic evidence that does exist, that shows actually within more rural locations domestic abuse can go underreported, and therefore there needs to be a significant amount of work to increase confidence, to increase support available to those individuals. So for us, that's one thing that we've actually picked up specifically that we obviously need to do some more work around and to kind of further explore. It's been identified through that. So the strategic needs assessment obviously is the basis by which this revised serious violence prevention strategy is built on. And I think the key word here in that title is prevention, and I'll allow Jonathan to kind of build upon that. But we as partners within Warwickshire are very good at dealing with violence when it's identified, but actually as a set of partners we have networks like the local community safety partnerships that already do a lot of work in this space, but actually we need to bring together more partners to look at the prevention of violence upstream. And like most areas in terms of prevention, academic studies show really significant benefits to the local community and to organisations by preventing this violence from taking place in the first instance, because a lot of the issues around, say for example, domestic abuse have an intergenerational impact as well. So the impact on children that witness that and the kind of trauma from domestic abuse can obviously be experiences that stay with them for the rest of their lives. So actually cutting the cycle of violence and these opportunities is really pivotal for us in this approach, and is something that as a district council we obviously fully support. So in order to do that, there's a wide range of county-wide interventions that exist within this strategy and within this approach, which I will not steal Jonathan's thunder on at all. But actually at a local level, there will be local delivery plans as well that exist. So for us specifically within Stratford, that will highlight actually specific interventions that we're going to be taking to reduce and tackle violence, which will actually be working with community organisations that exist within the district. So I suppose in conclusion, by adopting kind of the serious violence approach that we're taking in terms of the strategy, the local delivery plans, we are as a specified authority fully discharging our duties under this legislation. So at this point now, I don't want to go on for too long, always conscious of time, I'd just like to pass to Jonathan Toy just to talk more widely about those kind of county-wide interventions and the approach of the strategy.
Thank you, Sam. You don't have to worry about going on too long. You're in a room full of councillors and they haven't got that same filter, so thank you for that. I'll just bring in Councillor Keithy before I bring in Jonathan, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sam. That was a great introduction. I didn't know when we would have the chance to ask questions, whether or not you would take a question from me at this point before you pass on.
Yeah, I'm happy to take either questions
Okay,
now if
Chair.
the Chair is happy with that, or afterwards.
Okay, well, it's just something that comes to mind looking at the report, and particularly the data set that's been used to identify these high-risk areas. So I'm just interested to know, the context is that some areas of the district are expecting to have a significant amount of new housing, and that's already started in my own ward at Long Marston. Me on Vale now, there's about 850 households. There's 200 households already occupied at the airfield village, and a new affordable home site of 60 homes has been given planning permission very recently adjacent to it. So I wondered what the data set was that was used to prepare these high-risk areas, and how you take account of the future needs and where we're going in the future in respect of the additional homes that we're planning on having.
Brilliant, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it's a really, really interesting question, and I might need to defer to Jonathan just in terms of the kind of when the data was gathered from, specifically just to answer that part of your question. In relation to kind of future planning around housing developments, that is something that as a local community safety partnership and existing partnerships that exist, we do try and take account of that. So this isn't necessarily an example around serious violence, but say, for example, even in the planning phases around new developments, planning officers will contact us and we will look at new developments, we'll look at opportunities to build in, say, for example, infrastructure. So an example of that is actually for me on Vale, where actually we've looked at kind of installation of CCTV preemptively. So we've tried to sometimes look at actually the predictive measures of crime and disorder that might happen in a settlement of a certain size, based on other settlements that are within the district, to try and get a bit of an understanding preemptively of the things that we need to put in place before bricks are even laid into the ground, really, with that. Now, clearly, obviously, once that development is up and running, there's quite a significant amount of work that needs to take place to understand if there are going to be certain sets of issues that might arise from that particular community. So there's a certain degree to which we can pre-plan, but there is also an element of, obviously, once residents are living there, how we then incorporate interventions or approaches. But particularly with this strategy and the approach to serious violence, it is one of prevention, and it is looking at what community assets exist, what kind of youth clubs, what kind of activities do schools provide. So actually it is very localised, the approach we have to take to that. So it is, without saying it's from development to development, we do have to look at specifically what is within that new development and what kind of issues are there, and then how do we tackle that quite specifically.
Do you want to follow up, Councillor Keithley? I could.
Well, only, Chair, that I do, and I'll probably address you, just to say that Council needs to be mindful that sometimes in planning forward for new developments, the infrastructure is sometimes slow to follow up the building of houses. The reason I say that is I know that if any of my residents are watching this today, having been at the Meon Vale Residents Association meeting last night until about 10 o'clock.
You're looking good on it, by the way.
Thank you.
Sorry, sir.
The installation of CCTV at Meon Vale has not yet happened, and the housing estate is finished. So the residents have been waiting 4 years to get the CCTV. And there are various reasons why CCTV isn't there, but one thing I would say, Sam, is that, you know, it's one thing to plan ahead, I appreciate that, but as far as we're concerned, it's another thing to actually deliver on that infrastructure in advance, because the residents of Meon Vale have already suffered from antisocial behaviour, speeding cars, car thefts and such like, with no CCTV on the site. Now that will be coming probably this year, but it's been slow to come, and that was the point I wanted to make, Chair.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's a really good point. Obviously, we've got the Chief Executive here, which is good. He'll be noting these points, and particularly around the planning process as well. And perhaps triggers a certain amounts of houses being built. We can perhaps do more and get the money in for that. Councillor Wiley-Huggins, you want to come in, please?
Yes, really. It's almost a follow-up question to Councillor Keithley's question, and really it is. So there's been lots of new developments around the district. So, for example, Stratford, Shipston-on-Stour, you know, building works in Southam. So, from your experience, how do we gauge whether a development is actually in need of CCTV cameras? You know, and how surely Shipston would also be deserved of and their new estates would also be deserved of these CCTV cameras. So how is it that you decide whether there is a priority or not for CCTV cameras in new developments, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and yeah, great question. So I suppose in short, there's basically an assessment that is undertaken around CCTV provision and necessity and proportionality, because effectively CCTV is a form of public surveillance, of which it is overt, and obviously there's a lot of safeguards and measures around that. So there does have to be quite a considerable necessity test met to try and install cameras, which has to look at a range of other interventions that are taking place within that locality. So I suppose one of the things in which we do is we have a range of different meetings with other stakeholders like the police that feed directly into community groups that effectively assess crime and disorder that's happening within the locality and within Stratford District as a whole. So through those sort of problem-solving meetings, as they're called, we do have a grip on all of the data and all of the issues that are reported formally, but also allows community feedback from other forums that the police and partners, members of the Community Safety Partnership attend, for us to gather that information and to actually make that assessment around proportionality and necessity for CCTV. So we use those existing forums to at least start the conversations around what interventions are necessary from a criminal justice perspective to tackle whatever the problems are that are presented in that locality. CCTV is one of a wide range of measures that potentially could be taken. So it's when we look at a specific problem in a specific town that we would then make that assessment as to if it's necessary or not.
The follow-up question then is, and maybe Councillor Keighley can answer this as well, is how do we know, therefore, before a housing development has been even built or completed, whether or not they're going to need CCTV cameras in to combat violent disorder? You know, because it's not quite a good hashtag for those people living in Meon Vale, is it? We're so violent around here that we need CCTV cameras. I'm just kind of wanting to know how you can preempt it. Surely you can't preempt the need for CCTV cameras on a new development.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, and it really depends actually when you look at the size of a development. So say, for example, if you've got a settlement that's for 3,000 homes, it's quite a significant dwelling. If you look at another town, say, for example, Shipston, and actually you look at the crime and disorder that might be prevalent there are factors in this analysis that we conduct whereby we can make a reasonable judgment on actually the likelihood of crime and disorder that might take place within that setting. Now, as you say, actually, there's a degree to which we have to make a professional judgment on that, but actually, subsequently, even after that proposal has gone in around Section 106, we still have to undertake assessments on site when that development is actually in place. So similarly, we would look at crime and disorder levels once the settlement is in, because it does unfortunately take a significant period of time to put in infrastructure around CCTV. It does give us the opportunity to actually look at crime and disorder as it's emerging within those new settlements, so we're not always just relying preemptively on that.
Well, it's true. That's one then.
Well, just quickly, and I'm going to try and choose my words carefully, because this is, you know, I'd hate for people to think that Meon Vale is a dangerous place to live, and I'm sure you didn't suggest that. I know that, but why have they got CCTV? And I mean, CCTV is a large settlement. Luckily, at the moment, there are no pubs there or nightclubs and things like that, so it's relatively quiet. But there are vehicle movements and, you know, there's the potential. So having CCTV is quite a reassuring thing for the residents at Meon Vale.
Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Chair. My experience going back a long time, I live in a large village called Studley. When I moved in there, we had 2 full-time police officers. And we never had any problems with violence, burglary, or anything. Now, obviously, we haven't got this. And would you agree with me that police actually living in a community are far better than CCTV cameras? They get to know people, even if it's a new estate. They are there, they are a presence, and people know they are a presence. That's my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Thank you, Councillor. It's quite difficult to make a direct comparison because ultimately there are 2 different forms of intervention in relation to dealing with crime. Because on the one hand, you know, when you think about the role of police officers, obviously their role specifically is around directly intervening with individuals and trying to prevent crime as well as detect crime. CCTV is an entirely different asset. So ultimately for us, CCTV in all the towns and villages is a form of surveillance by which we can patrol, virtually speaking, all of those towns and those areas. So in essence, it is like having sort of a police officer who would be going around that particular area and kind of witnessing events, but we actually then call upon police specifically to then deal with an incident if it should occur. Now, it's largely impossible to make the comparison because they're different roles, and obviously you have one person who can directly respond, whereas the CCTV function is about coordination of incidents. But obviously there's a massive benefit when it comes to CCTV because it's on 24/7. We can respond, so if a member of the public or anybody witnesses anything, we can directly look at that particular incident if it's within camera view, establish what's going on, work directly with the control room in the police, and they can see the images that we've got, which actually tailors the response to that particular incident. So there's a large range of benefits to CCTV, as well as just providing the evidence afterwards, which ultimately a person's witness testimony is one thing versus objective evidence through CCTV evidence. So unfortunately, it's impossible to kind of say exactly a direct comparison between having a police officer versus having CCTV, because they are different functions.
I'll just ask. Yeah, but I wasn't talking about police visiting the area. I was talking of police actually living, like the old police station, where they got to know the community. We have CCTV cameras in Studley, but they don't pick up that much.
Apart from you, Councillor Hench, Hereford. Is that the way? No, I mean, go on, carry on, sorry.
So that was my thinking of going back. I mean, even in a village before that, in Alfchurch, we had one sergeant. But wherever you went, he was there.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I think... yeah.
It's just that I feel that it's a better system than just relying on CTV.
Yeah, I'll bring Mr Buckland in.
Thank you, Chair. And it's a really interesting debate around CCTV versus policing presence. To be fair, that's not quite the subject that and that could be subject of a future debate, absolutely, with the PCC possibly in present. But today we're looking specifically at how we are responding to the serious, and I'm not saying that crime isn't serious, but it is, when we're talking about serious violent crime, that is a specific definition that we're not covering with the speeding type issues or around that either. Sorry, I don't know if Jonathan would like to come in now as well.
I've got two.
Only because Sam was pointing at you.
I've got two more quick questions, then I'll bring Jonathan, and then we'll can have the debate as well afterwards. So Councillor Johnston, please, and then Councillor Fradley.
I just want to make a quick comment that the presence of CCTV is not an indicator of crime in the community. Wellesbourne's had CCTV for 20 plus years. It's very useful in the detection of the movement of criminals around the place. And I think as much as we can have, we should be trying to get.
I'm going to say it helps with the prevention, doesn't it? Councillor Fradley, you've got the last question, then I'll bring in Jonathan now.
Yes, I want to ask, when we're in the planning process for, you know, a lot of houses coming to a particular place, is security built into the planning process?
Yes. Sorry, Chairman, in response to that, design and out crime from the get-go is part of what planning is looking at on the larger estates particularly.
So you don't have to wait until there's a punch-up?
Yeah. Dark corners, trying to avoid that, sight lines, those kind of issues are part of the planning process.
Yeah, and then sometimes things move on, and then obviously things grow, don't they? On you know, street lights, these bushes that were planted to look nice, all of a sudden they're blocking, make a dark area. So, and then the councils, Warwickshire County, the police, Stratford, then put in bids for safer streets money, which again helps, potentially makes the streets safer. So, yeah, if I bring in Jonathan, and then we'll talk about, I've got some questions I'd like to bring in specifically related to Stratford District and, you know, our progress and that. So, Jonathan, if you want to come in, please.
Well, I'd say thank you, Andy, rather than Councillor Crump. We worked with Andy for 4 years. Hopefully I'm allowed that privilege. And thank you very much today to speak. I want to kind of start from a different place, if I may, if that's okay with everybody. I came into the world of preventing serious violence nearly 25 years ago when I was asked by a family to help move their son out of an area because he was at threat. And after a long, protracted process, I was able to do that, and I got him out into a safe area. And sadly, 6 months later, one night, he came back to meet some friends and was spotted, and sadly, his life was taken from him. And I want to start from that point because everybody thinks that serious violence is somebody else's problem. It's the problem of the council, or it's the problem of the police, or it's the problem of parents or schools. But the reality is it's our problem. It has always been our problem. And whatever area I've worked in, whatever community I've worked in, it's always come back to the bottom line that actually this is a responsibility of us, it's a responsibility of all of us. And it touches all of us. And you don't have to look very far in Stratford to see that it touches us. You know, Cody Fisher passed away 14 months ago through a violent incident in a nightclub. I don't think Cody had any intention of getting involved in any kind of violent incident. In fact, it's pretty well documented that he didn't. But that's what happened. He was a Stratford person. And there are people in Stratford, there are young people and families in Stratford we work with to this day who are caught up in serious violence, who have had some of the most horrendous things happen to them. People who've got involved at the age of 12 because they've been had a degree of status, but they've been groomed or exploited by older young people and got involved in county lines, conflict and dispute. It is our problem because it's in our area. And yes, Stratford has very, very low levels of knife crime, gun crime, violent crime per se. But the underlying causes are just as relevant to your families and your communities in Stratford as they are in any part of the country. And this is kind of what our strategy is trying to say to us in Warwickshire, is that we can over-focus on the fact that our levels of violence are low and miss the fact that the causal factors are just as there, and they are there across all socio-economic groups. This is not a conversation about poverty or deprivation. There are people in your communities from middle and upper income families who are caught up in serious violence situations. Some of them because they are actually targeted because they have more disposable income and status and respect, and is the street currency that drives some of this behaviour. And when you look at the background, when you look at the strategy that we've written, when we look at the things that are really causing the elements, and Sam has already highlighted, there are a number of real clear determining issues that face communities, families within Stratford as they do elsewhere in the county. Domestic violence accounts for nigh on 40% of our all recorded violence with injury. 57% of our knife crime incidents take place within the family home. And children are growing up in experiences of violence from pre-birth through early childhood and into adolescence. And they carry those elements, those determining factors, and other determining factors around neglect or hunger. And neglect isn't about deprivation. Neglect can form in all parts of different of our social economic structures. All those determining factors exist within the cases and the analysis we've looked at across Warwickshire, including cases within Stratford. Those determining factors sit there right from early years all the way through. And then what happens is a series of triggers take place. Could be that someone's a victim of bullying. Could be that they get temporarily excluded from school, or they're a victim of violent crime. Or, as we've seen quite a lot in some of our cases, people face bereavement or loss. And what happens is these triggers remind those people who are experiencing them of those other factors, those determining factors, the witnessing of violence, the issues of neglect. What do we do on the triggers? We close the doors. Someone gets temporarily excluded. Someone can't access the youth club because they've had a violent outburst. They're told that they're not going to achieve as much as their friends. Now, you might look at me, and I can see the puzzled looks. That's the reality of what they're told. This is what happens. The doors close. The doors continue to close. And then we wonder why their behaviour starts escalating, why they get involved in serious violence, why they navigate to peer groups, because actually they're the people that they have the closest connection and bond with. And within that peer group, they can play out their status and their respect and their currency, because that then is their value. And that's what holds those groups together. And as that escalates, we close even more doors. We go through the criminal justice system. Perhaps they might start taking substance misuse or experimenting with different things, or they might get exploited and become more vulnerable. And these are the causal factors that we see. We see them across Warwickshire. We see them within Stratford. So I believe all of us have a really clear responsibility to make sure those doors are kept open. So the programs that we are absolutely committed to within this strategy is to work with our schools to develop programs, provide one-to-one support, provide universal information to help people who are caught up or on the edge of getting caught up in this type of lifestyle and help them navigate their own way out. And we're doing that across schools within Warwickshire, and we're doing it within schools in Stratford. In fact, Stratford High School has been a real advocate of the work we've been doing, and I would like to commend them for their support. We're doing a lot of work in terms of how we manage transition between adolescence and adulthood. The support mechanisms that take place when adolescents are considerable. The moment you hit 18, they disappear. There is no continuation of support beyond that in many, many of the cases that we look at. So we're going to create a specialist team that will help people within those particular areas. We're putting some more investment work within our early help team to help children as victims of domestic violence, to help them within that journey, because we know that's a real issue and a real determining factor. And we are going to establish something called a Navigators Programme. And I'm really interested to hear that conversation around new developments and that kind of physical change in physical infrastructure. Because the whole idea of the Navigators Problem is not something that we've invented. It was developed up in Scotland by a very good friend of mine, Karen McCluskey. And the whole idea of it was to identify people in local communities who have a voice and have an influence that can help people on those journeys and help them navigate that pathway out. And it's really interesting when you look at physical development and we talk about the physical changes and the things that we really need most in those developments, that runs alongside it is the social investment as well, the social changes. We talk about policing in our communities or CCTV, but where is the investment in the social structures that bring communities together within those areas? Because if we're going to make a difference, if we're going to make it our problem, if we're going to own this as an issue, then we have to think about how we use those social investment opportunities that should come with some of those developments. And I've seen this firsthand. You talk about the elements that are going on in places like Meon Vale, or Studley, or other areas of Stratford. Seen large regeneration programs where lots of effort goes onto the physical side of things, but the social element often gets missed or bypassed or left. That should be part of the planning phase as well. And I believe that very strongly because I've seen it. I've seen communities where they have changed considerably, and what actually happens is you create social isolation. You create the very elements that move people, navigate them to groups that actually then hold them, the very peer groups that I've just been talking around. I think we can make a really big difference within Warwickshire with the work we're doing if we focus on the right things, we focus on the preventative side of things. And I'm incredibly grateful to Natalie and Andy and Sam for the support that they've given us getting the strategy to where it is now. But I would go back to that point I make at the very beginning. Please don't think this is someone else's problem, because this could easily be another family that is in your community or touches you in the same way as it's touched me for 25 years. And don't let this opportunity slip by to do something really meaningful within your district. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was really, really helpful and informative. One thing, obviously you said about far away, and we're talking about serious violence duty. One thing that seemed to be a theme was triggers. So that's quite another point. But if we can get that message across and people remember the serious violence duty, even because of something silly like that, I think this is really important. So, Malcolm, you can come in, please. I can see your hand was up.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you for that quite impassioned report to us, I think. One of the questions that came up in my mind as you were talking, covering all the ideas that, with regards to developments, new developments, planning, etc. How much integration do you and your team have with regards to the emerging South Warwickshire local area plan? Because it occurred to me that we're talking potentially of looking at 7 sites within that plan for new settlements. It occurs to me that this is to support overflow from Birmingham and from Coventry. And it occurs to me that we are going to be creating these without any infrastructure, which includes, in my mind, secure employment. And it seems to me from what you were saying, one of the issues is that there's nowhere for young people to go in terms of their future. And so that being involved from a security point of view in the local plan must be very critical for you. What are your comments on that, please?
I think you make an extremely important point in terms of how do you create an environment where people feel they have a sense of belonging. And in fact, if you read the strategy, that element of having a sense of belonging is really important. And new developments is a challenge for us. It's not just about, you're right on the employment side of things. So opportunities where people can develop vocational skills, whatever that is, even through the actual development of the site in itself, if there are opportunities in terms of apprenticeship programs that be built in terms of the building stage, they are all elements that actually see people actually having that sense of this is a place which means something to us, or whether it's small local businesses, local opportunities that can run, small incubator hubs that can be developed in certain areas, which I've seen really successfully done in other parts of the country. But transport's an issue as well. It's a really big issue. And that comes out really strongly, not just in Stratford, other parts of the county, that actually to help people have the opportunity to explore new opportunities, they need the kind of transport infrastructure that helps them to achieve that. So you're right to highlight those. Our schools are a real important key to this. And I know that Sam and colleagues are already working with some of our schools to actually see if they could extend some of their opening hours, some of the times which is available to them, to bring in certain businesses or bring in certain facilities that actually enable those opportunities to take place. So Natalie, myself and Sam were at a conference this week, weren't we, where we had a very good colleague of mine, John Poynton, who's set up a company called Red Thread that puts youth workers into A&E hospitals. He trains young people to become youth workers and puts into A&E hospitals to help other people who are affected by violence to find solutions. And he talks about the ecosystem, creating the right ecosystem within areas. So the connection between schools and community and housing and employment and education and transport. And every element of that ecosystem has to work in its right continuity. So I think with those developments, think about it in that terms of the ecosystem and where are the things that we would need to put into place, not just it being as a place where people live. I hope that answers the question.
It certainly goes a long way to answering my question, but my concern is I don't see the connection with the future planning. And that's really what my question is about. I accept what you're saying, and I accept the needs, and you've made a very, very, very good and strong argument there. But I would like to see the connection between what you're doing and what goes into the local plan. And have you been involved with that at all, and to what extent, and how seriously is that taken? Because it seems to me that I've heard a lot about the local plan, but I haven't heard anything about that.
I would say it's a real opportunity. I think it's an opportunity for Sam and the planners and the chief exec and others to work together to see how to do that. And I have seen it work really, really well in certain areas of the country, really, really well. And I would certainly encourage, and I'm very happy to support Sam on that particular journey. But I think it is a huge opportunity. I completely acknowledge the points you're saying, and when they arise, it definitely should be considered. Get that ecosystem as right as possible, 100%. And community safety is a really important part of that planning consideration, not just the hard infrastructure, but the social infrastructure as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Tom? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to that point, Councillor, as you said, it is a real opportunity to engage around that. Local community safety partners, including us as a community safety team, have engaged with planners and various members around that particular plan, but we've also engaged with partnerships as well, such as the Social Inclusion Partnership here, which I appreciate are cognizant of some of these wider plans about the fact that sort of crime and disorder is a key thing to consider and to look at. But I think, as Jonathan has kind of prefaced really well, is actually a lot of these do revolve around social interventions and obviously the kind of work that has to take place at that level rather than just always the physical considerations as well.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Wally Hoggins next, then Councillor Fradgley, then Councillor Passingham.
Thank you. It's a question not just for yourselves at the top of the table, and thank you for bringing all that to light. It is a sad indictment of society, really, that we are still, no matter what we do, still in this situation, in a worsening scenario, I think, as well. And I think that COVID has brought things, I think that's had a massive effect on where we are today. So my question to the Chief Executive and to yourselves is this project, which is obviously needed and so very, very valuable, preventative, changes lives. The thing is, if you can get people into employment and not down this path of crime, you know, it has very different outcomes for them in society and for society as a whole. I was watching a programme on it last night about, you know, young people involved in crime. It is only going to go one way, and turning that juggernaut around is exceptionally difficult. Do we have enough funding to make this really matter in Stratford? Because this is what is needed here. A great big fat cheque, I would suggest. Thank you. I don't mind who answers all of that, but we do have to have value for money. I do know that, but also to just carry on a little bit, it's, you know, the partner agencies. You know, have we got the armed forces involved? You know, sort of scooping people up, giving them that sort of focus on other career options that they've got, that kind of thing. You know, it's. And how do we advertise this to employers that, you know, they've got these opportunities for, you know, going in and coaching? Anecdotally, I spoke to somebody who's 80-odd years old. He's an ex-RAF policeman, and he said he's still haunted by the domestic violence that he used to deal with during his national service. Still haunted at that age. And, you know, that is some, as indeed am I. You know, it is, from my background, it is horrific, and I just think we need to make sure and be mindful that we have enough money. I don't want to be scratching around for the odd 10 pence down the back of the sofa with this one. Thank you, David.
If it's okay, I might take that one off David's shoulders, because I think that there's a few things, and thank you for those comments, because you're absolutely right. You know, these experiences that I'm talking about, and you're, you know, very clearly sharing with us as well, do stay with people, and it does define them. It defines them in their relationships and the choices that they make and the pathways of what they think they can and can't achieve. And a lot of the work we do, particularly with young people, young adolescents, is about their own identity. We have a program we've developed specifically for Warwickshire around identity and trying to work on those different elements to help people become the people they want to be, rather than defined by what's happened to them. It's a phrase I use all the time. Help them become the people they want to be, not defined by what's happened to them. So I completely echo what you're saying. There's a couple of points I would make. Is you already have an infrastructure here within Stratford, which in other areas similar to Stratford, they've tapped into and maximised, and I would absolutely take that opportunity. A good example, again, going to the work that Karen's done in Scotland, she wanted to bring employers in to this equation. So she went out and spoke to every barbershop and every hairdressers in Glasgow, and she said, these are people that you see all the time that come into your shops. What can you do differently? What conversations you could be had with that 20 minutes or a couple of hours in the chairs? or what could you do in terms of training? And she started like a movement within the industry that would then work with other young people, take more people on, have proper conversations with them, train them in some of the things that they were able to do and say, and they use the infrastructure that they've already got. And I would really encourage you to do that, because you've got a really good infrastructure. But the message about money, I'm going to be really slightly political about this, and not political on Stratford. The message about money is central government need to really recognise what has to happen in this space. It's not a conversation solely for district and county councils. There's been a structural misalignment of funding for serious violence that's been going on for many, many years. So the money for serious violence has tended to go into violence reduction partnerships, 18 or 19 across the country. Warwickshire is surrounded by violence reduction partnerships. West Midlands, Leicestershire, Thames Valley, Bedfordshire to the south, further to the south, we're surrounded by them. Warwickshire doesn't get violence reduction money from the government. And I have made this point loud and clear, both to the Home Office and regionally, that places like Warwickshire deserve a similar amount of funding nationally to support the work we're doing, because those causal factors are just as relevant to Warwickshire as they are in any part of the country. And that would be my call. I think that the more our voices are heard on that, and the case is made for places like Warwickshire, the better it will be. Because what otherwise happens is we become a net importer. Because people from West Midlands, from Thames Valley, wherever else, can find places like Warwickshire where it's easy to carry on their business. So we have to make that case loud and clear that Warwickshire needs that funding just as much as other places do. There's a mismatch at the moment, so apologies for that, but I think that has to be heard.
Young, so I'll come in briefly now. I've got a couple of the speakers. I think Jonathan is right. We are an importer of lots of our serious violence. We have some locally, but we are an importer about this. From a district council point of view, I think it'd be interesting to see. I've seen some you mentioned. We've got some local delivery plans, so perhaps come back later, sometime next year, with progress on those delivery plans. See what tangible results we've got, what measures they are. So see and see what barriers there are as well. Finance might be one of them, or communication. So I think that would be good to have in our future work plan to see how we are progressing and whether we need to refine this duty. Obviously, the local delivery plans, I would assume, would include something like diversionary projects. And obviously, we've got our leisure centres and things like that. So I think that would be good. And we impact on lots of people's lives. Prevention, again, in all forms of life, and with my fire hat on as well, prevention and protection is better than cure. So I think how we can do this, and we did touch on briefly with CCTV that could potentially prevent some of the things, but what other things could we be doing on that? The thing that concerns me about is the potential underreporting of domestic violence. So I think we need to see what we can do with that. We've all got a role to play as councillors as well. Even if we're putting something out in our local in touches, regular messages, I try and do that on a regular basis. But whether we can get that, and we can also use our partners when we as councillors are attending towns and parish councils to spread the message as well. So get that message out. It might be we are generally lower in terms of domestic violence in the rural areas than the towns, but I'm not sure whether it is that right. So what's the barrier for people reporting? So I think that we need to understand that. A really good point about doors closing that Jonathan raised. Why are they closing? Is it lack of training from the people? Are people saying things inadvertently that are putting young people off, diverting them to different views, and they'll get groomed, or for want of a better phrase, by their peers, by clever people who are pretending to be their friends, pretending to understand them in the short term, but in the longer term have got an ulterior motive for that young person, in particular, not just young people. So I think there needs to be some understanding about that. And then the other things that have come out to me are listening, communication, conversations. So I think that there are some key points I think we need to raise. And the final point I'd like to raise is that, again, I think is a key point, that the person needs to navigate their own way out of this, not, with help. And I think I'd like to see how we've got strategies, how we can do that, and how we can work with our partners. Because, like I say, it's one organisation won't solve this. So, and again, if we can perhaps in the future have some feedback on these points of how he's doing things, what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, what can we learn, what are other local districts and boroughs doing as well. So just how we can make the most of our resources, as we appreciate that we haven't got infinite resources. I'm making sure I've got that the right way around. So therefore we need to make sure we get the best results with the money we've got, and whether we do need additional resources. So I hope that's covered a lot of the key points there, but I will bring Councillor Fradley in next, please.
Thank you, Chair. In the main, we've been talking about violence to each other, but about a year ago, I suppose now, in my ward in Trinity Mead, there was a gang of youths running riot within Trinity Mead at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they killed a badger deliberately. So does what you do also cover violence against animals?
We would cover why those young people were there in the first place and why they were intent on committing harm to anyone or anything. Yes. But in their background, there would have been some element about why they were driven in that way to carry out that act. And it's interesting you talk about them being as a group or a gang.
It was a gang.
Yeah. And there's the dynamics of the group or the gang and how that group and that gang operate. Now, whether that's in terms of them killing an animal or whether they would violently assault another person, the dynamics of the group remains the same. And it's understanding how that dynamic operates, how that dynamic works. That's really, really important. Because sometimes within that group dynamic, the fact that people are playing off different people's status and element within that creates the environment where they feel they can go on and harm something or someone. And quite often, if you look at some of the cases that have come out, particularly recently, the dynamic of the group, even the dynamic between two people, can be so strong that it drives people to behaviour that even their own parents can't understand. Look at the case of Rihanna Jai and what happened with Rihanna and the children involved in that and the reaction of the parents within that. Now, the dynamic of those two people, yes, on their own individual levels, probably would never have happened, but the dynamic of the two of them, the dynamic of the group, the dynamic of the gang, is what we have to understand and what is causing that. And social media, and you're absolutely right, Councillor, about the impact on COVID is absolutely spot on. We're nowhere near seeing the full impact of COVID yet. Nowhere near. It's still working through our system. But the impact of social media within this element of driving behaviour cannot be underestimated here. So you're quite right. But think about how that group and that dynamic works. Who are the individuals in it? How do they relate to each other? What is connecting them, and what is it that's then driving them for their behaviour? Does that help? Yeah, I hope it does.
Well, I'm still concerned about violence to animals.
But we're not talking
I'm not disagreeing with the violence to the animals. What I'm saying is whether it's a violence to an animal or whether it's a violence to a person, the dynamic of the group has to be understood about why they were involved in that in the first place.
Yeah, and then it's preventing it from escalating further into serious violence. So, yeah, I've got Councillor Passingham and Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
Good morning. You talk about involving schools and youth clubs in preventing crime. Well, in Shipston, 10, 12, 13 years ago, there was a youth club attached to the school that had been running since the school had opened about over 40 years ago. And there was a police support officer based at the school. There was a headmaster that invited the residents in to help, the public in to help with running after-school clubs and involved the community a lot. And since then, there's been a new headmaster. The youth club was asked to leave the school because there's not so much county council control over what happens now in schools. And they found somewhere else, but after quite a few years of looking for a suitable place. The police sports officer finished probably at least 10 years ago. And the new headmaster has put a security fence around the school to keep the public out, more or less, or at least there's no public aren't allowed to have meetings at the school. So we're going in the wrong direction. I'm just wondering if there's anything the county council can do, anything the district council can do, or anything that is possible to try and reverse this situation.
In short, yes. In a longer answer, I think there's a conversation for Sam and the county council and our teams in education to have that conversation with the school. Where we have had it, where we've had similar conversations with schools within Stratford and other parts of the county, we've had a really positive response. And again, I'll commend the work that Sam and Alyssa and his team are doing with a college in Stratford at the moment, where they're actually that college has actually opened its doors in the evening to bring in other activity. And I think it's very challenging with schools because they're in a very challenging environment in their own way for lots of different reasons. But I would definitely be encouraging the dialogue and seeing what elements can be brought in and what other links could be made with other services in the area as well. So I'm very positive in the elements where the schools we've engaged with, very positive indeed. But I'm equally aware of some of those real challenges that they've got within their own school and school environment and their own school budgets and their own challenges on staffing. So, but I do think I would say 100% yes. Have the conversation and see what can be built around that infrastructure.
So we could ask for you or Sam to come into the school to talk about crime prevention and see if some of these things can be improved or whether we can get new things brought in which would help.
Yes, certainly, Councillor. We could have a conversation offline just in relation to that, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know Sam's got limited resources, but I know his team do go out to lots of places and give them lots of help and advice. So again, we need to perhaps publicise that as well as councillors. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yes, I wonder if we might focus back in on really the nub of why we're here today, which is to talk about the sort of, if you like, the violence, etc. I am really concerned about maybe some of the understanding regarding domestic violence and particularly the rural domestic violence. My ward is one of the most, well, probably is the most rural in the district. And I do think that there is some serious thought given to how we get this messaging out about it. And offline, I could give you some reasons as to why I think it's not being reported. It's not for me to say that to you in this meeting today, but I do think that we need to make people more aware perhaps of what domestic violence actually is, that it's not necessarily, you know, just getting a black eye on a Saturday night when somebody comes home from the pub. There's a lot more elements to it now, and I think it's a question sometimes of empowering people to realise their own self-worth in fighting back against this. And for sure it doesn't, as far as I'm aware, there are no boundaries to domestic violence, and I think that we need to be perhaps more conscious of that, but I do think there is an awareness campaign that is very much needed, especially as, you know, Warwickshire is also rural as well in its makeup. So I think we do need to focus in on the serious violence that you were brought in to talk to us about today. So thank you very much. I feel gratified that there are two officers that are clearly dealing with this so well for us today. Thank you very much indeed.
We would again, we'd absolutely support everything you've just said. We have a Violence Against Women and Girls board, which we have within Warwickshire. I know they're very keen on doing some specific work in rural communities. I know they would really welcome working with councillors like yourself, and would really value your support. So as an action, if you're happy, Chair, I'll make sure that Stacey Mann, who commissions the service, makes contact with you, and we can put some plans together.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Jonathan. Councillor Ralph, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just two small points. I was going to just follow up from Councillor Passingham. Stratford School did at one point have a PCSO assigned to them on a regular basis. He was actually, housed at the school. And I know from talking to the head, things worked extremely well. And sadly, budgets have cut that back. And I just wonder whether something could be done to bring that back. And my second point is, it's a little difficult because I can't say too much, but I am dealing with an incident of domestic violence. And I discovered to my horror that in order to prevent the person causing that violence, it can take a month for a restraining order. And in that month, that person can be in touch with that person until that restraining order. And it seems to me, it can take a second, let alone a month, but I'm quite concerned about that. I've just been recently dealing with it, and a month to get a restraining order seems an awful long time.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Ralph. I think, again, some of these things, when we have the Police and Crime Commissioner and the police back in as well, we're working with partners overarching, and there are some really good points that come out. Sometimes we're perhaps straight and away from this paper, but I didn't want to stifle debate, and I think we've got some action points as well, so I think it's really positive. Councillor Ralph, you can have the last word before I sum up. Make it good.
I must say that I knew before this morning very little about serious violent crime, not having really ever encountered it myself, fortunately. I've also found the discussion incredibly depressing. The fact that it all comes down very often to money, and money is very difficult to obtain. I'm also depressed because there do seem to be direct parallels with the National Health Service, where all the money, from what I understood you to say, goes to clearing up the mess rather than perhaps preventing the mess from happening in the first place. But my question is, what does success look like for you?
Oh, that's a really easy one. That's a really easy one. And I hope Andy will indulge me in this. I'll give you a picture of what success looks like. So many years ago, I worked with a young man called Kai, and he was 14 when I started working with him, and he got involved in a group, gang, whatever you'd like to call it. Developed a level of street notoriety and status, and tried to live up to that status at the age of 14. Loved his mum very much and didn't want to bring problems to her door, so he decided to keep it away from the family home. He would get out and for 4 years sofa surfed, moved from place to place, carried on with some of the street madness he got involved with, but he didn't really want to carry on with it. He wanted a different route out, and we started working with him. We started trying to find a plan that could get him out of that particular area, get him out of that situation, because he knew if he just left the group, left the gang, that would place pressure on himself, and that they would actually start coming after him. So he couldn't quite do it in that way, so we had to find a different plan. And he said, I want to get out the area. If I can move out the area, that would really help me. So we worked really hard. It's not easy moving a 15, 16-year-old out from one area to another, but it took us a while. He used to ring me every now and again and go, John, why haven't you moved me out of the area? And all the kind of conversation that would go on with it. And we got him out of the area. We got him to a little tiny bedsit flat, some way away from where he was involved, and it was no bigger than a shoebox. And he got a job, delivery, working driver, or working in a distribution centre. It's not what he wanted to do, but it was his first step on his route out. And he was very good he was always very good at certain vocational practical elements, particularly very good at design and fashion. And I lost touch with him a little bit, and he rang me about a year ago. I think it was about a year ago. He rang me when I was in the car, and he said, John, I've got a problem. I said, okay, come on, Kai, what's your problem? He said, look, I don't know what to do. I've just got a first degree at the London College of Fashion, and I've been offered a postgrad there or Oxford University. What should I do? And about 6 months later, he sent me a picture outside Balliol College in Oxford, because he'd chosen Oxford. That's what success looks like.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you. That's really inspiring. I think that's a real practical example. Like I was saying earlier, I think we've got some action plans. We've got the fact that we're going to get Sam to come back sometime in the next 12 to 18 months. I'll extend the time scale, give you a bit more time to come back with the progress, how things are going, examples of local delivery plans, engagement, diversity projects, with some measures, what the barriers are still, why doors are closing and how we can open them up, and how we can divert people away from being groomed. Key points about listening, communication, conversations, and giving some, particularly younger people, a way to navigate their own way from these actions as well. Wouldn't necessarily totally agree with Councillor Rice about it all being down to money. I think it has got some part to play, but I think communication and listening and understanding and passing the message out that people are not alone, and using the range of partners that we've got. I was going to say a plethora of partners, but it's not easy when you're sucking a sweet. Well, not necessarily. Yeah, we can listen. You don't have to pay for us. We've got voluntary organisations. We've got religious organisations. I get details from people via religious organisations of all faiths who do these things, and they don't. We don't pay them. So money isn't everything. It may be one of the barriers, but it's about communication as well and listening. And sometimes, we've got one mouth and two ears. Let's try and use the ears more than we use the mouth at times. So, right, that's my my summing up. Hopefully, Howard's got all that in. I think we've had a good hour on this. Got some action plans, and again, I think because of the wide range of subjects, we might have to look on a work plan how we bring in other things like planning out crime or planning prevention of crime and different areas. So thank you everybody for your contributions, and we'll end this item now. Thank you. Yeah, but saying that, lots of people don't go to the youth services. We'll have a mini break now, because we're going for an hour, and next we'll come back in 5 minutes' time to discuss the cabinet meeting on the 4th of March. We okay? We starting? Yeah. Yep. Right then. Thank you, members, for that little break there. Next item is the Cabinet meeting on the 4th of March 2024. The items that we're mainly covering: the Victorian Christmas Market Q3 Performance Monitoring Report and Performance Management Framework 24-25, etc., etc. We have got a guest appearance from Councillor Grocott and Judy Lewis, and I assume they're here not because they love coming here so much, because of the Victorian Christmas Market. So, shall we start with that one? Now, who would like to? We know it's going to the Cabinet because of the issues that happened last Christmas. That could be a good title for a song, couldn't it? Last Christmas. Sorry, Lorraine. I know you like them, really. And I know there has been a press release out as well that's come out. I think in the press release it says overcrowding, especially on the Saturday, alternative location of bus stops and taxi ranks, excessive noise from funfair, traffic movements, pressure on public toilet provision, stores crowded with insufficient gaps for safety and making pedestrian movement difficult, and hostile vehicle mitigation measures were in place, but these will need to be extended. So I think that was a summary of the main points. But Julie and Elaine, do you want to come in? Hopefully I haven't stolen too much of your thunder there, but I thought I'd try and give a summary as well.
No, thank you. Thank you for your overview of the amendment to the Victorian Christmas Market. Yes, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of representation in the local press and online about changes that are proposed to the Christmas market for 2024, which is further complicated by the fact that this comes under a joint lease from the District Council and the Town Council to our market contractor, LSD. And so it's not a straightforward thing to propose and move forward. And I just want to sort of emphasise that this paper is very much what the district are looking as proposing moving forward. And it obviously we are not predetermining what the town council is going to do, and also what Dermot happens to be thinking or not thinking as well. So I'd just like to make that clarification here. So this is the paper that's going to come forward to the Cabinet on Monday. As I said, it is very much a reaction to issues that were brought up by the Safety Advisory Group in their meeting post-market. And it's very much, as I'd like to sort of come back to, based on the safety and well-being of our visitors and the residents of the district, and not really getting into what people like and don't like about the market itself. Obviously, as an entity, we can always do improvements, and everybody has an opinion. And as I say, I just want to move away from this. So we have this paper here, and I'd just like to say we are looking, I've had a consultation with Julie, which she'll probably take up a bit more in a minute. We have, say, the summary about the success of the Victorian Christmas Market. I mean, it's been running since 2017. It started as a 3-day event. And then in 2021, in discussion on the Market Forum, which is the advisory body that is between the district and the town, where we come up with ideas that we will put towards the, suggest to the market contractor about how we think that things are going to be improved. We then had a variation order brought up in 2021, which increased it to 4 days. Based on the original market contract, which was put together in 2017, and then the market contract itself was rolled over in 2022. There are various legacy issues and ambiguities that have also been ongoing, and I think very strongly we need to look at those coming forward to the next market renegotiation of the market contract. So coming back to this, anyway, the recommendations, we've been looking at what will make our visitors and residents safe, because the Safety Advisory Group were looking at the food hygiene, overcrowding, especially on the Saturdays, location of bus stops, excessive noise from the fun fair, traffic movement, public toilet provision, and the stalls crowded with insufficient gaps for safety, and also hostile vehicle mitigation, because obviously the attendance for this market was very great. I mean, we had twice the car parking use on a typical Saturday in December, which is also very great. So what we've considered the recommendations, especially the Safety Advisory Group, and so our propositions were that we altered the, first, cancel the Victorian market. I mean, this is one thing we are sort of quite seriously considering now, considering that we are the regulatory authority as well, and it will be in our responsibility if there are any issues, or amend the format to 2 consecutive weekends with a revised footprint based on reducing the amount of stalls. The market provider has been able to increase the number of stalls, and it came up to 320 this year, which causes issues for us, including having to expand our hostile vehicle mitigation and other operational things, which on the end we are on the hook for. So that's what we will be talking about on Monday. So again, either 3.2, which is amend the 2 consecutive weekends with a revised footprint.
2.3, Lorraine, you mean?
Sorry?
2.3, not 3.2.
Oh, sorry. 2.3, sorry.
That's the trouble with it.
Number dyslexia, sorry.
Dealing with a particular accountant over here. Sorry about that.
Sorry, yeah, there's lots of accountants around. Or actually, we are, maybe 2.1, where we reserve our right to actually not hold the Victoria market in line with what happened in Lincoln this year, or last year now, which actually contributed to the crowding at our place, because an awful lot of coaches were diverted from there to here. If more, my concern is also if more markets take that action and we don't, we could end up with a bigger problem. So obviously this does not preclude what's the Town Council's view and the Market Forum's view are. So there you go, I rest my case.
Not guilty, Your Honour. Is that the Councillor Rolfe, please. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, can I just draw your attention to there is a very slight alteration to the report. 2.1, where it says cancel the VCM, yes, that is absolutely still an option. But where we've said after that, contractually, this will be both reputationally and financially detrimental. Well, that's true, it will be. However, it's pretty damning if we have a serious injury or a crush incident as well. But the next bit that says it is not advised given LSD has agreed in principle to the changes. LSD have not now agreed to the changes. They are not in favour of two-day markets. What they actually want is 2 3-day markets. So I need to stress that at this point, LSD are not in favour of the option of two-day markets. And section 5.2, I'm sure you've all picked this up. 5.2.1, where it says the costs of running the VCM are shown below. The are shown below, these should be deleted, and it should read the costs of running the VCR are split between the 2 councils. So I am more than aware of those, and apologies that things have literally developed by the day since we've started this process immediately after the Victorian market actually took place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Rolfe, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll state ahead of anything, I'm absolutely against 2 times 2-day markets. The reason I'm against it is because I have no guarantee, the safety of people, I have no guarantee that the same amount of people won't turn up on that first Saturday or that second Saturday. If that first weekend, the weather is wonderful, the world and his wife are going to come out, and I don't think with a revised footprint it's going to deter the numbers. It could be even higher than last year because of its popularity. So I can't agree to this because I think there is a serious safety issue on this anyway. I'm not saying I agree with anything else, or I've yet to be convinced of a 4-day, 3-day, or cancelling it altogether. I cannot agree to this because I think we could have the same problem. And if we did have the same problem, the reputation to this council, knowing that if we have that same problem that first weekend, the second weekend will be disaster because people will be going, how can they do it again? That is my viewpoint, and I've looked at this so carefully, I can't change my mind. Sorry.
No, thank you, Councillor. Obviously, you're very, very close to this, and I don't mean from your previous role on the town foreman, but you know it's very close to you. Obviously, you've been probably living and breathing this on a regular basis, and I'm sure you've been lobbied on many occasions. So, yeah, your point is well made. So, Councillor Wally-Hoggins, and I've got Councillor Littlewood, Councillor Johnson, and then Councillor Fragile.
Yeah, thanks very much for the update, Ms Lewis. That's been quite useful, I think, especially with the LSD stance. I think we do need to remember, especially with regard to the health and safety matters regarding dogs and wagging tails, really, in all of this. And that, to me, actually just sums up perhaps the experience with LSD. So you have my support when trying to speak to them, or my sympathy perhaps. That's the other matter. So I've got a number of questions here, because I think it's right that we get some of these matters out into the open. Because we have the regulatory authority, does that not mean that if anything goes wrong, which we hope it doesn't, it's a direct trigger that this will then go to the Health and Safety Executive? Is that correct? And we are absolutely culpable if something goes wrong to that extent. I have got more questions, but do go on. Yes, thank you. And I need to know, for the people sitting around here who are thinking, oh, Sarah's off on one again, if you could just explain the gravity of that, please.
Yeah, perhaps if I could answer that, and they're both linked here, and if I answer that, because I'll have forgotten your next question by the time you get to the next one, you know, it's old age and memory. Right, this is extremely complicated, and there is no simple, quick answer to any of this. I absolutely take on board safety. All the other things go out the window, to be honest. This is about safety, and the fundamental issue is about the crushing potential and the numbers. Everything else is either doable, controllable, or manageable. It's about the health and safety. Now then, it's very complicated in that we, as the District Council, are actually classed as the organisers of the event. So as such, we cannot regulate our own event. It would be the HSE. Now, the question there is, it's our SAG that we organise and chair that are raising the fact that this event is no longer safe to run in this format. We cannot serve a prohibition notice on ourselves. So should we decide for the event to go ahead, we can't serve that prohibition notice. The HSE would have to do so. However, can we honestly allow an event to go ahead that we have already identified that is not safe to do so? So in terms of an organiser, and in terms of if my name was going on that paper, I'd be saying, no, we cannot organise as the District Council that event. Now, it's complicated because this is a joint contract between the District Council and the Town Council. Neither council can do something without the agreement of the other. So if the Town Council actually said, we want to go ahead with the event, we would then, well, obviously through the appropriate process, if we then said, well, we as the District Council won't be part of that event, then at that point we would become the regulatory body and we would be able to serve a prohibition notice on it and actually stop it happening. In terms of the health and safety and who's responsible, Mr. Buckland's the chief exec over there. Who's going to be, the one answering the questions? It will be Mr. Buckland as the chief executive. We cannot delegate our responsibilities in terms of health and safety. Some of Dermot's comments coming back have been, well, there's never been an incident yet. Well, I'm sure that's what they said at Hillsborough the week before 92 people were killed in a major crushing incident. The fact is, we know there is a problem. And I've thought long and hard about this. We've had numerous discussions. We've had lots of people involved. We've put it back to Dermot, whose original stance was, oh, there's nothing wrong, it can carry on. You know, it's what is the solution? And if I had one that I thought was a guarantee, you know, I'd tell you. To go back to Kate's point, the idea of two-day weekend markets is that the big issue was on the Saturday. So a lot of people come for the weekends, they come for the whole weekend. Once the town's booked, it's booked. So if they've booked their hotels and they're full on weekend one, then hopefully they will come to weekend two instead. And the idea is, knowing the Saturday is the busiest day, that by giving them 2 Saturdays, we spread the work, you know, we spread the actual kind of numbers coming in over 2 Saturdays rather than feeding them all into one. There's been lots of suggestions about, oh, let's just have 1 3-day market. I can't see how that can help, because we then cram 4 days of people into 3 days. Can I give you an absolute guarantee that running 2 2-day markets will absolutely resolve the problem? Hand on heart, no, I can't. The only guarantee I could give you that will resolve the problem is that the market doesn't happen. Because we cannot control the numbers. I've had all sorts of suggestions about, oh, can we stop the number of coaches coming in? Well, how do we do that? Unless the police were going to be there physically barricading the roads and stopping them coming in, I can't do that. We can try pre-booking. What happens to those that don't pre-book? How do we actually close our town off to actually stop people coming in? We can't do that. There's too many exits, there's too many entrances, too many shops, houses, etc. So to cover both points, we as a council, both reputationally and in terms of the damages, would absolutely be liable. No doubt at all about it. Does 2 days absolutely solve the problem? I'm not going to promise you hand on heart it will. It's the best step we could come to.
Can I, if you do another one, and then we'll go round and then...
Say thank you for that very full and honest answer. I wasn't expecting anything else, but there were some very tough messages in what you've just said to us, and I thank you for being brave enough to speak them out loud at this meeting.
Yeah, so I'll bring you back in again, Councillor Wally-Hoggins. I'll just try and bring everybody in. So Councillor Littlewood is next, then Councillor Johnson, Fradgley, then Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Much has been said already, and safety is core of the issue. This is a victim of success, isn't it? Very much so. And the fact that it's out there and well known, I don't think you're going to stop people coming in. My concern about the consecutive weekends is that's just going to spread the pain for the people in the town. It's not solving the problem. The problem is the location. You need another site, it seems to me, and one which is able to be designed so that it isn't vulnerable to any sort of external violence. And at the moment, success equals target in terms of Extinction Rebellion and all other types of people. And I cannot see how you're going to come up with a safety plan for the centre of Stratford for this. And maybe you need to consider, really, do we need to do this anymore? And I think that's a very serious question. And maybe that's what item 2.4 is, because it doesn't say what it is, it just says an alternative option. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just come back there. I mean, to say, yeah, again, people have said, why can't we do it on the Rec? Why can't we put it all on the Bancroft? And actually, I did have a bit of a out-of-the-box thought last night due to another activity that I'm involved in. The problem is, yes, the location, that the roads, Stratford, we're not great, whatever event we have, and it's not just the market, but you've said it yourself there, with Stratford, it's the Christmas market. I don't believe whatever we do will stop people coming, especially when we know there's been less and less Christmas markets since COVID, and there's less happening, so this is, where people are coming to. It doesn't matter how we market, yes, we'll put less stalls out there or whatever, it's Stratford, it's a Christmas market, people will come. Location is an issue. just something that came to me last night was, and this was one of my things, I'm sure you all know I'm very involved in dog activities, but over COVID, one of the things they started doing was a June mass instead of a Christmas. And they put like a full Christmas show on in the middle of June because it's outdoors, the weather's nice, etc. And I know that sounds a bit of a stupid idea, but in terms of thinking out of the box, if the kind of whole thing was moved to a different time of the year, would, and I'm not saying this only occurred to me last night, would it be possible to then put it on somewhere like the Rec or the race ground or somewhere else where we haven't got the issues of flooding and water? So you're absolutely right. It's a case of thinking, where does this go now? But I think we should all be mindful of the fact that as much as there are, yes, upset residents, to a lot of the businesses and the hotels, this is absolutely major income to them, at that time of year. And again, thinking of doing it on 2 different weekends was, do we double that income so the hotels are full for 2 weekends rather than 1? But, as much as people will, whatever we do, we will be absolutely wrong on this. There is no win and there is no clear answer. I've got no doubts about that whatsoever. But it's a case of, also thinking of the economy of the town and the businesses. And actually, this does give them, particularly the hospitality, quite a big boost at that time of year. So, every decision's kind of, it's weighing up every single aspect, but that doesn't undermine the fundamental safety aspect. Thank you.
Yeah, I can see, like I say, you're damned if you do. I'll bring you in a second, Lorraine. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. And some cynic would say, oh, the district council is putting people's profits in front of community safety, which is obviously ludicrous, but you can obviously see that message come through. Councillor Grocott, please, and then I'll bring in Councillor Johnston.
Yes, just sort of building on Julie's points as well. I mean, this is obviously about risk management. There's no absolutes in this. We can't say there's one solution that's definitely going to mitigate all the risks. But what I was going to say is as well, is at this point, we do need to come to a decision if we are going to do a 2x2, lots of 2-day events. That will be part of a thing that puts a line in the sand, and then all the other issues where it comes to the traffic management, what happens with coaches, car parking, that sort of thing can then fall after this. So, this is a thing we need to make now, but all these additional things that cause nuisance to the residents will fall into place afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. Councillor Johnston, please.
Part of my life is also dealing with Wellesbourne Market, which also has its peak attendance in the first weeks of December regularly, if in exactly the same conditions as the weather's good. And that creates its own highways problems, which I suspect have some rub-off against this, because I expect some people at the weekend tried to do both, Wellesbourne Market and the Victoria Market. I'm trying to understand why we think that spreading it over 2 days is going to reduce the attendance numbers on the 2 Saturdays. I see the point about the hotels. People may not book into a hotel twice. But will that stop the day visitors or reduce the number of day visitors? I see the things we're putting in about reducing the number of stalls. We had exactly the same conversations about Wellesbourne at bank holidays. They do in fact have less stalls at the bank holidays because the traders don't turn up, but the visitors still come. It doesn't make any difference to the attendance. So I'm just trying to understand what the logic is. You've given us figures on car park usage. Why do we think that, just to be slightly frivolous, why do we think that only 3,000 people will come on the Saturday in week 1 and 3,000 in week 2 rather than 6,000 again in both?
So I did touch on that before. The idea is that we know, right, at the minute we do 4 days, the Saturday is by far the busiest day. So the theory is if we give them 2 Saturdays to choose from, it will spread the numbers across the 2 weekends rather than everybody coming on the Saturday. I think there's also the hope that if they've got 2 weekends to choose from, they're possibly more likely to come for the weekend. They couldn't come for the weekend on the first one because everywhere's full already, and that it might split the numbers over the 2 weekends. As I say, it's, you know, I haven't got a crystal ball. It's the best. I can. We've had a lot of experts around the table coming up with a lot of different solutions, and you know the safest. I think someone said. Oh, sorry, I think Lorraine said earlier. You know, there's only one safe solution here, and that's that we cancel it. That's the only absolute guaranteed solution, that it will be 100% safe. What we think is, by doing this and trying to spread the load, it will spread the numbers over 2 weekends.
Thank you for that. Councillor Fraggy, please.
Thank you, Chair. On a safety issue, I think that if we go down this route, we're going to have problems with other things that we do in the town throughout the year, such as the light switch on. I mean, I've been to the light switch on, and I've been to this particular event, and you know, it seems like equal numbers. So if there's a safety issue on one event, there's going to be safety events on problems on the other things that we do in the town during the year.
Chairman, just to respond to that particular point, every time there is an event, the Christmas light switch on, the Victorian market, there will be a separate safety advisory group meeting which is held to oversee that particular event. And I think you're right to identify the issues that we had, not this year just gone, but the previous year in relation to the Christmas light switch on. That was an issue. Changes had been made this time around. I think the issues with the Christmas market is that you're funneling people into places where there are market stalls, which you can't then disperse. I think it's slightly different from the position at Wellesbourne, where you can spill out even more. But if you're looking at Bridge Street particularly, you're getting to the point, and crikey, there was that question incident in South Korea the year before last, where there was just too many people in one place at the same time, and God forbid something then happened, you could lead to some kind of stampede, some kind of clashing situation. So look, Julie's doing her best here to come up with a pragmatic solution to the issue that we're facing ourselves with. Whether we could engage with coach operators on a voluntary basis to say, look, you've got 2 weekends, please perm anyone from 2. Don't seek to attend every session. What we know anecdotally that the impact that it had on the local economy. We were hearing of local food establishments that were running out of food over that weekend. So it's absolutely something we want to maintain. But ultimately, as Julie said, I don't want to go to big boys prison because I don't want somebody to die in the first place. That's what we want to try and avoid. But just to give you assurance, each event is taken on its own merit when we're looking at the safety implications from each one of those.
Okay, I've got another comment, if I may.
I'd rather have a question, Councillor Fraggy, rather than a comment, please.
All right. It's a question of, well, I live on Banbury Road, and the traffic was up past my house, and I live halfway down Banbury Road. And a good number of the vehicles that were on the Banbury Road were lorries. And they're lorries that didn't actually want to come to the event. They want to get through Stratford, and that's the way they go. So I think we've got to start looking at how do we stop the lorries coming in to try and get through Stratford, because if they're coming there and they want to get up to the M40, there ought to be other routes.
I think that I think I have to be working with the partners, won't it, with the police and the county in terms of. But yeah, again, from a logistics point of view, and that's no pun intended on this occasion, it's going to be very difficult to do, I imagine. But Julie, you've got some other points on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I mean, David was absolutely right. What he said is we have a SAG for every big event that happens, and a number of changes were made to make the Christmas light switch on much safer. And that's exactly the process we're trying to go through for this 4-day for the Victorian market. There are things we can control, and there are things we can't control. For every event that we hold, or certainly events of this nature, we do a comprehensive traffic management plan that costs us quite a lot of money to actually produce, and they come out with recommendations about what we should do, etc., etc. We do work with county, we do work with the highways, but at the end of the day, on instances like that, quite frankly, those lorry drivers don't ever need to be coming into Stratford, but they still do. But trying to get that message out to lorry drivers is, we can only do as much as we can do. We can do the comms, we can do the traffic management plan, we can do the signposting, etc. But ultimately, if they choose on the day to come down that way, it's not a great deal we can do about it, unless I was speaking to someone about Worcester Market the other day, where the police are actually on the roads, blocking the roads and stopping people coming down. And I was just thinking, ironically, I was in Leicester City 2 weeks ago, and there was a football match on, and they do the same. You've actually got the police out there right from the motorways stopping more coaches or whatever coming in. We're not going to get that, certainly not for this year, in this sort of timetable to turn that around. So it's very much, it's what can we control and what can't we control. And some of these are in the, very, very difficult to do. The Victorian market is not the only event with a problem. We know we're just such a popular place and everybody wants to come here, and that's great, but it comes with its problems, I'm afraid.
Yeah, the trouble is, and it's the lorries are too wide and they block the cycle lane. They're sitting there, rows of, and you can't get your bicycle down.
Yeah, I think your points made, Councillor Francis. We'll make a note of that. So next speaker is Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding from what I've heard so far this morning is that if you'd known last year what you know now, you may well have cancelled last year's Christmas market because of safety issues. Therefore, if your proposal is successful and you get precisely half the number of people on each Saturday, would you still have safety concerns? And my other question would be, what, and in broad terms, would be the financial liability to the District Council if the event was cancelled?
I think in answer to your question about safety, whenever there is an event, there are safety concerns. I previously worked for Gateshead Metropolitan Borough Council, and I was involved in, the Great North Run, Tina Turner concerts, with literally hundreds of thousands of people attending. When you have events, there are safety concerns. Why we have a SAG, why we ask for a management event, an events plan, is to mitigate as many of those concerns and as issues as possible. Hindsight's always wonderful, and that's again why we have various debriefs after each event to actually say, right, what was good, what wasn't good, what could be done better, what can we change? And we've had more SAGs and debriefs after this event than I care to think about in a long time. So whatever we do, there will be safety concerns. If the numbers were halved, will there still be safety concerns? Yes, we can never predict, heaven forbid, a terrorist or someone driving in through the barriers into the crowd. It could always happen. What we do is mitigate. If we had less numbers, fewer stalls, more spread out stalls, that will go a long way to actually mitigate the concerns. What we can do, as Councillor Grocott said, is we mitigate the risk as far as we can. In terms of the financial consequences,
Sorry, Julie, I don't mean to cut you off. I'd rather us move into exempt, if that's okay, Chairman, to respond to that particular point that Councillor Rice has said. I think it would be appropriate not to do that in open session.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. Do I need to read the form?
Yes, please. And it's the paragraph 1.
Is it?
That is the finance one, isn't it?
don't have one on the Scrutiny Committee. If you bear with us on this one a second, please. Right.
It's power.
Is it on there? You see.
It's only covered up agenda on page item 16.
Oh yeah, I've got it now. Right, it'll be the following item, won't it? The following item contains exempt information as defined in the following paragraph of Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Para 3, relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Members are reminded that whilst the following items have been marked as exempt, it is for the meeting to decide whether or not to consider each of them in private or public. In making the decision, members should balance the interests of individuals or the council itself in having access to the information. In considering their discretion, members should also be mindful of the advice of council officers. Should members decide not to make a decision in public, they are recommended to pass the following recommendation: that pursuant to section 100A4 in brackets of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended, the public be excluded from the remaining business of the meeting in view...
Is this just, sorry, Chairman, it's just this one item.
Excluded for this item of business of the meeting in view of the fact that the nature of the proceedings will be such that, if the public were present, there would likely be disclosure to them of exempt information under paragraph 3 of Part I of Schedule 12A to the said Act as amended. Thank you.
You're going to propose
I'll propose that. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Johnson. All those in favour? Thank you. It's passed. Julie. I think we... The yeah, not back in yet, are we? Yes, we are. Oh, we're back in. Right, do you want to...
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Got a question about safety.
Yeah, it is. I think I can shorten my question, Julie. Having heard some other information, it's a complex area, and we got into discussing lots of different aspects of the decision making. What we need to rely on really is the work of the Safety Advisory Group. No events are going to be 100% safe, and it's very, very difficult for you and your officers to predict the likely numbers. But when I looked at the Cabinet papers, I thought to myself that for the Cabinet members, it was difficult to reach a conclusion without something that helped them understand the risk assessment and the significant findings of that risk assessment. There are going to be risks in organising any event. If you were to perhaps present information in such a way as they could understand the mitigation that's in place for significant findings of risk, because not all risks are going to be significant, then it might aid a decision-making process when it got to Cabinet. That was my point, Chairman.
Yeah, I think it was well made, Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, so just to explain how it happens is basically when we know what the event is going to be, there's an awful lot of planning and preparation goes into that event. There is an event management plan, there's a traffic management plan, risk assessments are written, etc. All the relevant documents are kind of prepared, and the Safety Advisory Group, you know, meets and kind of advises accordingly. So there is a risk assessment that looks to mitigate as many risks as possible. Following the event, the SAG met and has met a couple of times and had debriefs, and I've summarised the main bits of their comments in 1.9.4 of the actual report without me including all the risk assessments and everything that was discussed and all the minutes. The big issue fundamentally about it going forward is the overcrowding. The food, I talk about food hygiene. Yes, we've already actually dealt with that one. The location of bus stops, we can deal with that one. Excessive noise. The traffic movement in itself is only a health and safety risk at the point that coaches were dropping people off in the middle of the roads and people were walking across roads. So actual traffic congestion in itself, apart from the pollution, etc., that it creates, actually, if traffic's all stationary and not moving, it's actually quite safe. You know, so it's looking at what are the actual issues. The fundamental, really, really big issue is the overcrowding. So, yes, our risk assessments deal with hostile vehicle mitigation, terrorism, threats, how you get the blue lights in if there's an incident, we deal with all of that. What we now have to look at is going forward, what can we do differently? And our risk assessments as they stand with the event as a 4-day market is not going to fundamentally reduce that issue of the overcrowding, and that is the big one, which is why, you know, I've not gone into the detail of all the other issues. You know, we've touched on, do people like the market? Was it Victorian themed? Was it selling whatever types of sausages or whatever? None of that is the risk assessment or the actual issue. It's the main one is that point to the overcrowding, but I have listed them there in the in 1.9.4. In terms of what will we do about it in the future, what we need to know now before we can move forward is what will the event look like, and then we can again form the SAG, write the risk assessments and do the various event management plans for that. The outcome of that could be sort of 3 months down the line, actually we've still got an event here that we're not 100% happy with, but it needs to be a work going forward. I can't engage further with police, with highways and all the other organisations involved until fundamentally we really know what our footprint looks like. When we had the debrief, fire, police, county, highways are all involved in that SAG debrief, so they all actually have their say as to what they think the issues were.
Councillor Keith, have you got a follow-up?
Well, only quickly just to say that, yeah, thank you, Julie, for that explanation. I mean, what it comes down to is whether or not if you make a change to the format, going to 2 days, whether or not that risk of overcrowding becomes an acceptable risk that you're prepared to take. And that will be a decision for Cabinet.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Fair point. Any further questions? Yeah, it's a really strong debate on this. Lots of information, and again, apologies to the member of the public that we had to go into a closed session, but there were valid reasons for that. So I think that we had to do that. We're not trying to hide anything, just to make sure and make people aware of that. So we've got several options we could recommend to Cabinet, or we could note the options available to Cabinet and ask them to consider particularly the points raised by Councillor Keithley. So I'm prepared to be guided by members of the committee. I'm getting the flavour that the options, you know, they have got difficult options. And I do take on Councillor Keithley's point, which I think is particularly relevant. But I'm welcome to be guided by members of the committee. Any thoughts on that? Councillor Wiley-Hoggins, please.
Yeah, I think we need to wish Cabinet all the very best with this decision, really, and also that we closely monitor this as overview and scrutiny because of the risk to the reputation of the council. And I think, therefore, depending on the decision that's made at Cabinet on Monday, that we then, you know, continue to look at this through our work programme. It may be that, similarly to the task and finish groups that we have, that we just perhaps consider having an update of where we're at if this event does go forward. You know, I'm happy to be shouted down about that, but I think that we've had a very thorough insight into this. I'll you know, that's my 10 penneth anyway.
From Councillor Councillor Alford, and then I'll come in then, please.
I feel quite strongly that I need it to be noted with this committee that I do not endorse a 2 times 2 day market for purely on safety grounds. If that's okay to be noted.
Yeah, no,
I don't know whether that's allowed, but I...
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to... Because Chair was asking whether there's a consensus to support the recommendation to the Cabinet or not. And I don't think
I'm not supporting it.
I don't think we've got to a position on that. I don't think it's been put to the committee specifically. Do you support the recommendations which are going to the Cabinet on Monday? If you don't want to take a view on it, I think you could report back, Chair, that there was several different views, because it's not an easy subject, this.
No.
And that you're effectively report back the individual views in summary form and then allow Cabinet to make their decision.
Yeah. Is the committee happy that we don't make a recommendation to Cabinet, but note the proposals, note the views of the diverse views of the committee? Councillor Littlewood, you indicating as well, Councillor Johnston. I couldn't remember whether you were, I couldn't tell whether you were, yeah.
Do we need to consider whether we'll be recommending option 1?
Councillor, yeah. Personally, I wouldn't be recommending cancellation. I think that we put forward our views that is one of the options, and if you've got strong views on that, Councillor Johnson, I'm more than happy to hear those, and we can put put forward as part of the comments.
If David's proposing that and somebody seconds that as an option, you could take it. You could then see whether
propose we vote on option 1.
Have we got a seconder to cancel the market?
So that fails, Chair.
That falls then.
Fails. Right, should we go forward through the 4? Go on, Councillor Littlewood, and then I'll go through the proposals.
My hand was up before. Sorry,
Yeah,
I confused you. I think from this, yes, it's a complex subject. There's been a lot of discussion about it, and I'm sure we could discuss it further. I agree with Councillor Keithley. We need a formalised, for anybody to make a decision on this, would need a formalised risk assessment and mitigation plan. What I would like to propose is that this meeting urges Cabinet to put risk assessment over commercial issues, and that it is the reputation of this council that is the most important thing here, because it is complicated. There are a lot of arguments against holding it, but obviously people would like to have this, but and I'm sure the economics in the town are very important too. So I would urge them. I would like us to urge the Cabinet to take that seriously into account.
I would say it's not just the reputation, it's the safety of the residents and the people attending as well, and people passing through. So I think if we just add that onto what I would be more than happy to. You proposing, Councillor?
Yes, Chair.
I would be more than happy to second that. I don't think it's too unreasonable, and it gives the Cabinet the option to look at the decisions, look at the four options, and I think it's given a flavour of what we debated. So, all those in favour of the proposal? Yeah, yeah. Right, so that's agreed. I think that was a really good debate. I think we've tried to tease things out in different ways. And I think it has been very helpful.
It's not a straightforward matter, is it?
No, it's not a straightforward matter, and like I say, I think, well done for all the officers involved, and obviously Lorraine, of course, Councillor Crocott, and obviously well done, Craig, for backing up your boss as well. So you'll go far, young man. So well done. Thank you. Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is the Q3 performance report. Hopefully, if people have got some views on that. I know we've had a long time on that one, but obviously, if we, I'm open to comments on that part of the Cabinet meeting. Yeah. Page 13 of the Cabinet report, Q3 performance monitoring. So comments, questions, comments back to Cabinet. And this Simon, I think Simon's in the ether somewhere.
Yeah, he's been in the ether watching. Is it raining?
Yeah.
I'm here, don't worry.
Right. Do you want to kick off on this, Stuart? I'm more than happy to if nobody else is.
Chair, thanks. No, I've got some questions on the performance management framework for 24-25 rather than the monitoring report on page 17, 18 and 19.
Kick off with the Q3 performance monitoring report, and then you come in on that.
Fine.
Yeah, a couple of ones. I think the general ones on HCP1 and HCP2A, again, we're touching on staff absences, and I know it's difficult to touch on particular absences, and again, I think it just shows in terms of how staff are managed in terms of absence, sickness, etc., can impact, and how much resilience, that was the word I was looking for, there is in the system to cope with staff absences. I think that would be good to find out about. And I think most of the other ones are not too bad. And again, apart from the NNDR, but it's likely to be back on. So I think it's about resilience, how we cope in terms of covering for staff absences, because in the home choice place, which is obviously the residents is contacts us by, I think that there's some things to note on that. So just on that one, Simon, and then I'll bring in Councillor Wally-Huggins and Councillor Keithley.
Possibly Simon might be able to help with the report itself, but the actual performance is something we have had some long-term sickness within the area that, you know, we are ultimately a relatively small authority and we can't double team on every position. So I take the comment, but that I mean the comment within the report is genuine. We're seeking to address that. I know the new head of service, Annette Homer, is working with the team on a complete refresh of the process in which we process. I said that too many times. How we process Home Choice Plus applications. So I can give you assurances that we are taking that issue very seriously.
Yeah, and so I know we've got the budget performance monitoring in terms of the capital and revenue monitoring outturn, and obviously there's I think there's a favourable variance of about 1.6 million. So whether there is some leeway with resources, that's just I think it's just a comment whether something can be done on a temporary basis, because we know Home Choice Plus is quite pertinent and relevant to members of the public. Right then, I've rumbled on. Councillor Wally-Huggins, then Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, just to do with the staff absences, I think it would be really useful because obviously there's a tie-in here between the housing team and perhaps ill health. Is that what we've just alluded to there? And I think moving forward, it would be useful that if we had within the breakdown here of which teams are experiencing or what the levels of absence due to ill health is, I think that would be a very useful piece of work for us, because that would then highlight perhaps other matters that might be going on within the organisation. Thank you.
And if I could respond to that, we have the joint consultation negotiating group that receives that further level of breakdown already, and we have 7 elected members on that. I'm trying to think who the chair of that is at the moment. I can't remember. But we could circulate that as an information sheet in any case, because we do capture that information at a lower level. You sit on it, yeah? Yeah, please. But it's more of an employment issue rather than an executive function. I'm sorry to be...
Lawrence Stanley, is it? Yeah, Councillor Stanley. What might be good then, whether there could be some linkages from that group into here?
I'm just thinking, Chairman, it might be an information sheet that we send to members to
that's even better. Good idea, David. Thank you. Councillor Keithley, please.
Thanks, Chair. We moved on to the 3rd bullet point yet? No. Well, I'll just hold my breath.
Are you on this one, or are you on the next?
I'm on this one, I think.
Good
I think
man,
I'm on the
you.
same page as you, Chair.
That's very rare, so for one reason or another.
Rating of Stratford District as a place to do business, 6 points down. I just wondered, do we know why? And if we don't, are we trying to find out?
Simon, you like to help on that one?
Yeah. Yes, Chair, I can answer that one to you, Councillor Rice. We have actually undertaken, that came from the Stratford District Council business survey report that we completed a few weeks ago. What we will do is we can circulate it to make sure that all members have a copy of it, and the reasons are in there as to why. Can't recall at the moment exactly myself, but I can certainly get it circulated to you.
You happy with that, Councillor Rice? Right then, I can't see any more. Councillor Littlewood, you sneaked in there last minute.
Get in under the bar. Yes, question on the targets for major and non-major planning decisions. Targets are 60% and 70% respectively for the time to complete within the agreed period. The performance is extremely good at 92% and nearly 84% respectively. My obvious question here is, the targets are very low by comparison to performance on the basis of continuous improvement. Why aren't they at 80% or more?
If I can respond to that. The targets that we are using here are the government's targets for how quickly the local authorities should respond to plan applications, and You may have heard of Offlog, which is the new Office for Standards in Local Government, which has been established. These are two of the specific measures that Offlog will be monitoring us and our performance against those national targets. That's why we have maintained those. Two new targets, though, and when we go on to the next report, you'll see not only is it the speed of determining the application, it's effectively the quality of the application, because what is being introduced within the suite of performance measures next year are the number of applications which are then subsequently overturned at appeal. Our performance on those is very good in comparison with our peers, but we need to make sure that we monitor that information so that if we do start going away from that these are now the indicators that government will use potentially to take intervention or potentially to do a more detailed Offlog. Read Offlog is effectively the former Audit Commission type level of review that they would be undertaking.
Just to follow up on that, and thank you for that. That is a minimum performance on a national basis. We're aiming to be better than a minimum performing council, and I'm sure we do. I really think that from our own point of view, and because we do receive, I receive from parish councils continuous complaints about the time to determination of planning applications. It's a perceived number. There are always highlighted applications that may or may not be run of the mill. But I really think that we can show that as a council that function is being set to a higher performance than the national average, and therefore, whereas we can't be above criticism, but we can show we at least are doing a damn sight better. Thank you.
Yeah, because I've got a couple of points on that. Firstly, I think we should be, again, shouting that we have been challenging the planning department in the past, and I think, again, we should be shouting this out to say, yeah, this is what we're doing. But going on about Councillor Littlewood's point about continuous improvement, perhaps we need to understand why some of these ones, like the ones at the 4% that are in the percentage of building control applications within TAE, are not being achieved, just some of the ones where we're not achieving them, and understand why, because there could be potentially underlying causes. So yes, it's really good, yes, we shout it out, but we don't rest on our laurels as well. So I think that's some fair points on that one. Right then, Councillor Keithley, the performance management framework, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. This is about all the metrics that we'll be looking at in future years. Well, certainly next year. And David's just introduced the concept of a couple of new standards in respect of major and non-major planning applications and appeals. I've got a few questions, one of which is about what constitutes major and non-major, because I don't know, but we might be interested. I've got a question about there being no targeted reduction in the residual waste quantity by household. That's stayed the same at under 325 kilos per year. I don't understand the introduction of the new recycling contamination rate, 5%. You might help us with that. We just actually mentioned in the previous report the possibility of some sort of benchmarking across services in respect of sickness absence, but I wonder how we perform relative to some other peer groups on sickness absence as well. And I've identified that we don't have any measure of safety reports at all. Now, that might be not more than just sickness absence, but that might include things like minor or major accidents. Now, it might be that we don't have very many, but certainly one of the things that we should be doing is to be highlighting and encouraging people to highlight risks around the workplace through hazard alerting, and also reporting on any minor injuries or major injuries, and bringing that to the attention of us and staff.
Chairman, if I could do them in reverse order, so that particular point, we have a discrete health and safety committee that elected members can observe, and ultimately, as was said earlier, it's my ultimate responsibility for the health and safety of the organisation. Now, all of the minutes and the agendas of those are available, and it includes any incidents that we've had in the previous quarter. So all of that is already reported. We can point you in the direction of where that sits within that suite. The difference between major and non-major planning applications, major is a development of more than 10 units or more. So that's a simple definition under that. The recycling and contamination rate, and you're right to identify there's actually 4 new measures that we're seeking to introduce within the suite of performance measures this time, and they are all related to the performance measures that Oflog, again, are monitoring at a national level. They were absent from the suite that we were previously looking at. The rationale for including them now is that we, as an authority, the executive, the OSC, need to be aware if those indicators are going offline, because what Oflog have already said is they will be measuring those, monitoring those, and if we go, and they haven't said what constitutes good or bad performance, it's just your comparison with your peer group could trigger an inspection from Oflog. That's why we've introduced those, including the contamination rate, which is set at 5%, because that's our current actual performance in relation to the contamination of recycler. That isn't just your dry recyclers, it isn't just what comes in your bin, and to be fair, we have had some issues this year about an increased level of contamination in the recycling, in the dry recycling. And it has coincided with us having a joint contract in place with Warwick. So we need to make sure that we can monitor our own performance versus Warwick's performance. The final point you make about, sorry, it wasn't the final point you made, the final point in response, the amount of residual household waste collection, keeping that at 325 kilograms doesn't seem ambitious, I accept that. But if we refer back to the previous report, on page 18 of the agenda, we have seen that we haven't been on target with the current performance this year, and for the last quarter 3, it was actually 89 kilograms of waste that was generated by each household compared to 81. So we will do well to deliver against that level of performance.
Thank you very much for that, David. Just as a quick follow-up, clearly it's important to try and inform and educate our residents about this performance, particularly in respect of contamination of the dry recycled waste. And we ought to seek every opportunity to explain why it's so important that it isn't contaminated with other materials.
Yep, no, that's a fair point, Councillor Keithy. And in terms of dealing with Oflog, I'm sure we'll take a root and branch review, make sure we're doing those okay. Right, so you saved me just then. Simon, so can I bring Simon in, Councillor Rice, and then I'll bring you?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, all it was just another question, answering the question previously asked about sickness absence and across peer groups. I think that it might go towards the employment report or something. It might go in there, but if it doesn't, we have got sickness rates across all the district councils. We can do any comparisons you want. So we could also add that into the performance report in the future, see where we sit. So that information is widely available.
Sorry, I didn't apologise. I apologise. I didn't respond to that point. Our performance is good though, compared to other local authorities. Although we are, being a small local authority, when we have 1 or 2 sickness absence long term, it makes a significant difference to the total.
Sometimes there's a reason for stripping out long-term sick as well.
And Chairman, in response, when we report to the JCNG, we absolutely do that. We show short-term absences versus long-term absences, and then the whole.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Chair. I shall get onto my climb onto my hobby horse and talk about comms. I notice some items that hadn't been dealt with previously are now on the Performance Management Framework Plan of Action for the coming year. And I'm very pleased to see under CP1A that there will be a booklet this year going out with the council tax demands, which I believe 20 pages, which will explain what the council has been doing and is doing, which I think is a very good thing because since, what was it called, The View? was stopped about 18 months ago. I don't think there have really been any direct communications with residents from the council. And that's my point, really. I think that it's all of items under CP1A, which is the future use of social media, implement a media and public relations strategy, and then under CP2A, review of the method of communicating with residents, review of the council's website. I would ask that direct communications be given priority and are considered during these deliberations, because many people do not use social media. Many people do not read the Stratford Herald, and that is assuming that the press releases that go to the Stratford Herald get printed. And the website is nothing more than a really bad notice board that is difficult to access and to use. And putting information on the Stratford website, council website, is really gives no reason for residents to go and look at it. And I think more needs to be thought about when it comes to communicating directly with residents. So I would urge, so this is not a question, I'm sorry, it's more a case of me communicating with the Chief Executive who's sitting with us, that under all of these headings, direct communications with residents should be given some sort of priority. And because often with direct communications, the argument against is, well, that would only go to 60% or 40%. There are a lot of old people, they're not necessarily online. I think we should be looking more at direct communications and not indirect or indeed very indirect communications. So sorry, not a question, a statement, but I would quite like a response.
I'll get a response from Mr. Buckland, and I'll come in as well.
I think I probably agree with 95% of what Councillor Rice has said. I do take some issue with the comment that our website is really bad. I don't believe it is really bad. I think there's room for improvement, and I think we can constantly
I'll bring you back in.
Review. We have some statistics that we can share with the committee about the number of self-service transactions that have happened through the website. It's in the several hundreds of thousands a year, which is more efficient and convenient for the individuals, but also delivers some significant efficiency gains for the council. And I think it was an estimate we would have needed another 15 staff within the contact centre if all of those transactions were telephone transactions rather than through the contact centre, so through the website. So I'm not saying there isn't room for improvement, but I don't think it's in the category of really bad. That is the point I would take issue with. In relation to the other comments, the View magazine, as you're aware, that the producer of the View magazine has folded. We have the opportunity through
folded.
Oh, very good.
Oh, dear.
It's a trick, does he? As far as the council tax, we have an opportunity every year that we send people their council tax bill. We have some capacity within the envelope, and therefore we're taking advantage of that this year to talk about the council's performance and also to lay out what the new council plan will be for the authority. So, as I say, I agree with a lot of what you've said, and I think direct communications. My mother's registered deaf and blind. There's no way she's going to go onto a website and start surfing to have a look at what's going on within the authority. We have a very diverse community, and we do need to contact them all. I will also say that the press releases don't just go to the Stratford Herald, they go to all the local media, including the Leamington Courier, Stratford Observer, other news outlets as well.
Councillor Rice, I see you itching to come back.
Yeah, we have had this conversation before, and I think Councillor Wally Hoggins would probably support me in saying that there are a number of different magazines and newspapers in the district, and many of them don't consider themselves to be in Stratford when it comes to publishing press releases.
They receive the copy, though. Councillor Rice, they do receive the press release.
Yes, no, I'm not disputing that. I know they do. Yes, I know they do. Actually, yes, it was a sweeping and probably unnecessary statement to say bad.
It was
I think
impassioned.
impassioned is the word. Thank you, Chair. I think it depends on the metrics you use, doesn't it? I think it would be, yes, you're right, the website is very good if you want to renew your green recycling bin contract or payment. Where it is less good, I think, is in two aspects. One, the search engine, I think, is very, very poor. And secondly, and that is not, I think, overstating it. It is very, very poor. Secondly, it does put the press releases on the website, but it's so passive. What can SDC do to drive residents to the website more than it does at the moment? And that seems to me is the fundamental question. Is not, it's there if you want to take a look. It's, why should I go there to take a look?
Before I bring Mr. Buckland in, we do need to vote just to continue the meeting because we'd like to. No. Because we're going to go over the 3 hours. I don't think we'll be going on for much longer. We've got one more item to go, which isn't particularly onerous, and then the work plan. So I'm proposing that we vote to carry on the meeting past the 3 hours. All those in favour? Carried.
They all look so enthusiastic. Sorry, so I wasn't going to respond. I think what Councillor Rice was saying there was building on the debate that we've been having. I do accept that the search engine within the website is poor. We've recently had a demonstration of a new product which has been developed in-house to give us a much better opportunity, and it does build upon AI technology to scrape the whole of the council's website and come back with much more intelligent and considered responses to the searches. Because to be fair, if I need to find something on the website, I go to Google and I search that way. It's a much better search than we have on our own website. So I absolutely accept that point.
Brilliant, thank you for that. And again, say one size doesn't fit all, and we need to use as many different tactic strategies to get to people. Obviously, I've been doing consultations the last 2 months, and sometimes the attendance has been quite good, other times it's not so good. So again, I think one size doesn't fit all, so I think that's a fair point, Councillor Rice. Right, I don't see any other questions. That next item is the update on the task and finish groups. The two task and finish group are housing associations, which is chaired by Councillor Wally Hoggins, and we've got the joint chairs of the public houses sat next there on my right-hand side. So, Councillor Wally Hoggins, do you want to come in on the housing associations, please?
Yes, we had the housing. We had another meeting last week, which I was chair of for a very short time, and then was taken over by Councillor Littlewood. Thank you for stepping in there. We had the housing association that really deals with the Fred Winter Centre and those perhaps more vulnerable homeless that we have within the district. And I was heartened at their openness, really, about the services that they're putting forward. Unfortunately, I did have to leave just after their presentation, and again, we're still waiting for all of the responses to come in from the housing associations, and it's only when we've got them all that we can then start putting together similar patterns and recommendations. I don't know if committee services are able to tell us how many completed questionnaires we've now had back.
We've still only had 2 back at the moment, unfortunately, but I have had positive responses, and I've been given dates for several more. So out of the 10, we're looking at a confirmed dates for 6 or 7. Hopefully the other 2 can come back and give me some more reassurance.
And I think with that, what we have to take as a group is that if we don't get the responses from those housing associations, then that in itself is a matter for us to deal with, and for us to then look at as to where we go with those housing associations in the future. And that's the honest truth. There is a lot of information garnered by the failure to submit the responses to that questionnaire. And that is a key piece of the work that we've been doing. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Keithley, please.
I was just going to quickly ask when those questionnaires were sent to the housing associations. I was thinking that, as my friend Councillor Wally Hoggins here was making the point that it was taking some considerable time to get the responses. How long has it been since they received the questionnaires?
I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. It was before Christmas. Our last meeting was at the start of November, so it would have been November.
They were given, I believe, they were given 12 weeks to submit this because it's not an easy document that they've got, as you've seen. It's not like a 2-page kind of tick box exercise. It does actually require a lot of transparency. So that is why we've been slightly more generous with the time. But we're coming. It's the 1st of March, and I think we're coming to the end of patience. Really, what sort of timescales have you been given for this completion?
So I'm expecting a couple a week from today, and then the rest of them by the 15th of March.
So does that answer your question? And I think we've been more than generous with time. If we'd only given them 6 weeks, it's not, you know, and during the winter months, it is a pinch point for authorities, housing associations. So I think we've been more than generous with the amount of time to be kind, really. Is that all right? So thank you.
Yeah, and I can say I think that's some fair points again because it was a really comprehensive. We were trying to gather much information all at once rather than go back in dribs and drabs. So I think some leeway is fair, but we have a cut-off point, so I think that's fine. Councillor Johnston, you're our expert on public houses, please.
Yep, I'll be fairly brief. We've made fairly considerable progress. Sarah, and I hope I pronounced the surname right, Dil Mahmood from the planning team is drafting a planning advice note on public houses. We hope to have it concluded before the end of March. Approval is given by the head of development and the cabinet member for development. And we are meeting on the 11th of March to give it further consideration.
That's really helpful. Any comments on that? No? Brilliant. Right, the work plan. Obviously, page 51 to 56. I think next month we've got a packed agenda. So I don't think we need to have any additions to that. Mr. Allison is going to come in and update her.
So yeah, you're right, Councillor Wally Hoggins. It was going to be another very long meeting. So, but the changes are BDUK have come back to me and asked if that can be delayed until later in the year, and the chairman's said he's happy with that. Chair, sorry, because
I don't mind chairman or chair or Andy, but I'm not precious, so okay. I don't think you've ever thought I was precious, so
no.
You don't normally say that, Councillor Rice.
So yes, so BDUK, that's been held back till later in the year because they're going through a few structural changes at the moment. So they'll have basically a more comprehensive review. I think it will benefit the committee more as well. Also, Councillor Couch's question time is going to be later in the year because he will be reporting to us quite a few times over the next few meetings on the SIL allocations, which was of a priority for the committee. So if we prioritise that now, and then a general overview of his portfolio can come later on. So basically the main item for next time will be the police update. Unfortunately, I've spoken to a few members and said the PCC was unable to attend today, and he won't be able to attend next time because that will be during his pre-election period. But officers from the police will be able to attend next time, which I think is positive.
We're happy with that? I think that's fine. I think, obviously things have come out today, particularly around serious violence duty and for that to come back in the future. So I think it's still going to be quite a packed agenda next time. So if members can come forward. Go on, Councillor Wildhagen, then Councillor.
I'm just looking at number 5, Housing Association Task and Finish Groups. There's notice of motion, Council, 12th of December 2022. I don't think that's the right date.
Sorry, you don't think that's the date that the notice of motion came to council?
Is that the right date that it's taken this long to come to here? Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. So his notice of motion in December referred to, I think I know that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee first considered it in March. So it took some time for officers to have the conversations behind the scenes, because originally it wasn't a recommendation from the notice of motion for a specifically form a task and finish group. So that was a decision that that's how it was presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Okay,
then it was delayed until after May because of the election as well. So that's why there were kind of significant delays.
Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification, really, as I don't understand where we're at with the SIL allocations. It says that it was agreed that a report would be considered in June 2024 to assist with the revision of the process. Next report, June. This is April's meeting. Are we under an obligation, David, to start the next round of SIL allocations, or is that within our gift, effectively, to decide when we do that? When's that like to open up? They're the sort of questions in my mind. It's about the timing, because residents and local communities are saying, well, what's happening this year with SIL? Could you help?
Yeah, well, absolutely, and that's why we need to undertake the review of the methodology for allocating the money before we actually open then the call for bids. So that's why I think it was urgent. Just check, sorry, I haven't checked with Howard before now. Howard, has John and Councillor come into the April meeting to talk about that particular issue?
Yes, they're aware of these dates. Yeah, John and Councillor are, yeah.
So I think there is some urgency about that. So the June could very well be a reference to the Cabinet meeting when it goes for decision there.
Howard, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the June date of the Cabinet decision, it was decided that there would be sort of a pre-information kind of session in April.
And we can provide constructive comments, can't we? Like we did this time. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Chair, thank you. Tell me if I'm out of order with this one, but looking at the work plan going forwards, and especially after the item which took up so much time with the Victorian market, there will be a decision from Cabinet, but do we have the opportunity to review that decision and the basis on which it was made?
Generally not, because you've scrutinised it, you're giving your views in pre the Cabinet decision. So it's like that double jeopardy. You can look at it afterwards or before, and you've chosen to make your comments. And look, I think it is a truly challenging issue that we're faced with on that one.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'm going to say, I think for a future reference, we could potentially look at major events in, not just Victoria Market. We've talked about the Christmas light. Councillor Fratty spoke about Christmas light switch on, and how they're managed, and from the community. There's several different guises we could look at it in the future. But I don't think we should be concentrating just on the Victoria Market now. We've debated it so deeply. So, Councillor Wally-Huggins, please.
Yeah, like I said when we were discussing this matter, I wonder if there is some benefit because of the potential for damage to the council. Depending on the decision that's made on Monday, whether we just like we have the task and finish updates, we have updates as to where we're progressing with it.
Slightly a different question. Sorry, and absolutely you can feed back from the debate is whether it could be formally called in, as how I was translating that question. And of course, if Cabinet make the decision in relation to the recommendation which is there now, well, you've already had the opportunity to discuss that today.
Brilliant. Right. We all happy? Brilliant. So I will call no urgent business under item 9. So I'll close this meeting at 13:15.